Brother Vernon is from Los Angeles, California, and his home group is the 9604 group. The title of Brother Vernon's message is From Lawlessness to the Obedience of the Creator's Law, and he will be speaking for 45 minutes. It is an honor and privilege to have you with us here today, Brother Vernon. Welcome.
Thank you so very much for that introduction. Thank you, Tamara, for your invite. My name is Brother Vernon, and I am a recovered alcoholic. And first, I'd like to give thanks to God for the breath of life and the gift of sobriety, and extend a warm welcome to our newcomers in hopes that you'll hear something shared through me that may encourage you to take an opportunity and a forensic look at the state and condition of your life to find out if you suffer from what many of us that claim to be alcoholics suffer from. It is my honor to be here today. Makes my 13,417th day of uninterrupted sobriety. So I came to Alcoholics Anonymous July the 20th, 1987, by way of a treatment center. And so in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it definitely, the founding members, the first 100 men and women, they shared that they're going to share in a general way what they used to be like, what happened to them, and what they're like today. And then it also states, if you want what we have and you're willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. So when I read that, I found that there were 3 prerequisites towards recovery: willingness, the position of being ready, and actually taking the steps. I found it doesn't make sense to be in a 12-step fellowship and not embark upon the 12 steps. So a little bit about what I used to be like. For those that have never heard me, at the age of 5 years old, God has allowed me, since I've been in recovery, to reflect back to the genesis of when I started drinking. And what was revealed to me at the age of 5 years old is when I experienced having my first drink that I recall. It was during the time that my father was given this party in this apartment complex that he managed. And as the adults were partying, the children were isolated in the bedroom away from the parents. And the reason being is because the parents did not want us to pick up what we call as kindergarten or profane language. Okay, so at that time, I heard a lot of cussing, I heard a lot of laughter, I heard a lot of music playing, I heard a lot of arguing. I just heard a whole lot of different things that pricked my curiosity. So eventually, during those times that my father usually had these parties, they called me out the bedroom to entertain their guests during the James Brown. I used to be an avid fan of James Brown, so I used to like to imitate his style of dance. And I performed in front of his company. I got the applause, and I was sent back to the bedroom. The next morning, when I woke up and walked into our living room, I noticed that there were cups sitting on the coffee table, the countertops, the stereo, the floor. They had ashtrays with cigarette butts in it. And if you study any young adolescents, what you would find them doing is anytime that they are roaming around the house, they're exploring, looking for something new to get into. So I went looking in those cups on that coffee table, and I noticed that it was a clear substance in one of those cups. And I didn't know if it was water. I didn't know if it was 7 Up. I didn't know what it was. All I know that it was clear. So I picked up that cup. I drank what was in it. It went down through my esophagus. It hit the pit of my stomach, and I gurgitated everything right back up. Later on, I found out that what I had done was picked up a cup of Seagram's gin that was straight. So that was an early sign, as I reflect back, that my system rejected alcohol. And so for quite some time, I never revisit the drink idea. But however, uh, I remember sitting at home watching television. And in the late 60s and early 70s, there were a lot of beer commercials on TV. They had Schlitz, they had Budweiser, they had Coronas, they had Coors, they had Coke 45, they had Old English 800, they had Schlitz Malt Liquor Bull, they had Michelob's. And so the one that captured my attention for some unknown reason was Schlitz Malt Liquor Bull Has the Power. I had no idea that I was trying to acquire some power, but it gave me some power. And during my upbringing, I used to be a bedwetter. So I would wet in the bed. And oftentimes when this happened is because my mother thought that I was being lazy, that I wasn't getting up. But that wasn't the case. The case in point is that I would be in a deep sleep, and I would be in that sleep believing that I'm getting up, going to the bathroom and using the bathroom, but yet and still I did not get up. So I used to get whipped behind that. And I resented it. And so that's the first sign that I can recall that I was receiving resentments towards something or someone for some unknown reason. And this continued on for quite some time. My mother would tell me, boy, you need to get up. You need to go and take them pissy sheets off the mattress. You need to take off those pissy clothes. You need to get in that tub and take a bath. And that's what I did. But also, I noticed that my mother, in my early days, taught us how to pray. And I remember she gave us a prayer to say at night. We would kneel down on the side of our beds and we would say this prayer. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. And so that was my introduction to prayer. So we would say this every night. I remember my mother used to take me and my brother, because I have two other siblings, and she would take me and my brother to the barbershop. And every time that she would take us to the barbershop, she would always get my hair cut completely off like it is today. And I resented that because every time that she had my brother's hair cut, he would get one of those haircuts where you get your hair faded on the side and you would be able to slick your hair down on your head with that Vaseline or grease. And they would always say that he had good hair and I had bad hair. But I found out today that there's no such thing as good hair and there's no such thing as bad hair. Hair is hair, right? Now, they call it good hair and bad hair based on the grade of the hair. If it's straight, if it's nappy, if it's kinky or whatever. But I'll share about this bald head experience later on in my message. So by the time I got to junior high, well, we moved to some projects in East LA out here in California. And in these projects, they had only two groups of people. They had Hispanics and Blacks. The only time that we saw any other groups of ethnicity was when I went to school, which were the teachers. So during the time that I was going to school, having these resentments towards my mother whooping me for wetting in the bed, I had a lot of physical confrontations going to school. Because what happened is that I would have this bald head and students would run across, the grounds and slap me up beside my head. And then I remember my mother took us to the optometrist and I had to end up getting a pair of glasses to wear at school. But what I noticed is that anytime that I went to school and I had those glasses on my face leaving the house, by the time I got to school, I would take the glasses off and put them in that eyeglass case and stick them in my back pocket, hoping that every time that I sat down, I would crack those glasses, right? Because they used to call people that wore glasses nerds or geeks. So I refused to accept that. And so living in these projects, these Hispanics that I had met, what they were doing, they were drinking Budweisers, Michelob's, Coronas, and Coors. And so I tried drinking their beers at particular times, and I wasn't feeling the effect produced by the beer as they were. So what ended up happening is that I found myself drinking their beers, but I was pissing too much, rather than feeling the effect produced by it. By the time we got to junior high school, we had moved in a whole different neighborhood. And on this side of the neighborhood, I remember going to school, and I remember witnessing students getting their money taken away from them while they were going to school, their lunch money. And so that kind of baffled me. It's like, how are you going to allow somebody to steal your money from you or jump on you and take your money, right? So what happened is that I started going to the liquor store with some of my friends. We would piece up our lunch money, go to the nearest liquor store, and request from one of those guys standing outside that liquor store if they would go in and buy us something to drink. Now, we had noon dances at our school during lunchtime. So after going to the liquor store, we would ask the guys to go in and get us a bottle of Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill. So I started drinking this Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill because it was sweet and it wasn't real toxic and potent. It probably was about maybe 7 to 12% proof alcohol. Now, the aspect of this story that I'm sharing with you is so that I could see the broad perception of the progression of this disease. So what I noticed is that when I started drinking that Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill, I go back to the school and I ask one of you ladies for a dance, and you would accept. And if you rejected me, then I would tell you what you could do with yourself, right? And so the Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill stopped working. So I had to upgrade. So I upgraded to Richard's Wild Irish Rose, Mad Dog 2020, Silver Satin and Kool-Aid, Night Train, Tyrolean wine, white and red port wine, and that's where the boat docked at the White Port. As I stated to you, I tried those Budweisers, those Michelob's, those Coronas, that Schlitz Malt Liquor Bull, and that Old English 800. And by the time I started drinking the hard liquor, I started off with peppermint schnapps. I didn't want you to smell the alcohol on my breath, but yet and still, you still smelled it anyhow. So then I just started drinking Seagram's Gin, Gordon Gin, Come and Catch Me, Johnny Walker Red, Johnny Walker Black, Bacardi Light, Bacardi Dark, E&J Brandy, Christian Brother Brandy, and at the end of my drinking, I was drinking Bacardi Rum 151 with a Schlitz Malt Liquor Bull or Old English as a chaser. So that was progression from 12% proof alcohol to all the way to 151% proof. Now, if I can't see the truth in that, then I must be blind like Stevie Wonder. But the beautiful thing about Stevie Wonder, he may not see as we see, but he sees in the unseen. So don't get it mixed up. So, okay, I hit my spiritual bottom, because that's how I arrived at the rooms of recovery. My mother, I was on a 3-day run. My mother summons me to her apartment. She inquired about some jewelry that came up missing off the dresser. And she asked me, did I steal it? And I told her no. So then she asked me again, boy, did you take your sister's jewelry off this dresser? Did you steal it? And I started crying out to her, and I asked her to please believe me, I had nothing to do with it. And I literally cried out to her, as the big book says, frothy emotional appeal seldom suffice. So I cried out so much and so hard that I ended up on the floor as if I was in a fetal position, back in her womb. When I rose to my feet, my mother uttered some words and said, boy, you need to get you some help. And my response to her was, if anybody needs some help, you need to get you some help. And she looked at me with that estranged look as if I had lost my mind. Later on, I did find out that I did lose my mind. And so she dropped her head and walked out the bedroom after my response. And as I stood in that bedroom, I heard this loud, audible voice. And it said, how dare you speak to your mother in that manner? I'm talking about with authority. Now I'm looking around in this bedroom, but there ain't nobody there. So I believe it was God speaking to me. And he said, "How dare you speak to your mother in that manner? Here's a woman that fed you, clothed you, housed you, took care of you for 3 years, 7 months, and 13 days in the absence of your father, made sure you got an education, made sure that you was well kept and that, you had clean clothes on and all of this." And he said, "You do need some help." Instead of me being angry at my mother, not receiving my emotional appeal, and me telling her that I didn't need no help, instead of me turning to the liquor store to show her that I didn't need no help, I turned to the telephone. I responded to that voice, and I called up a significant other, and I requested a phone number from her to a treatment facility. She gave me the number. I called it, and I inquired about a bed space. They said, "We only have one bed space here." And I knew that that bed space was meant for me, if it's only one. And they said, "Well, if you want this bed space, you need to get here expeditiously." So I left walking with just the clothes on my back and the shoes on my feet. I got about maybe 5 or 6 blocks away from my mother's residence because I didn't have no money to catch the bus. I didn't have no car to drive. I didn't have no bicycle to ride. I didn't have no skateboard to skate on to get to this facility. So I left on foot patrol. So as I'm walking, I noticed some guys working on street maintenance. And I asked one of them if he had $1 so that I could catch the bus to go to this treatment center. He gave me this a strange look as if he was in doubt about what I wanted that dollar for. But yet and still, hesitantly, he gave me the $1. And I got on that bus as they worked on that corner. I stood at that bus stop and I got on that bus and I got to that facility. Now, and I'm going to tell you that when going to this facility, I didn't know what to expect because I had never been into a treatment facility before. So I'm going in with the unknown, but I'm going in hoping that they got some kind of help for me. And so as I get to this facility, they interview me. They ask me, "Am I an alcoholic?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Well, you can't come up in here because this is for alcoholics only." Now, I'm saying this because I was driven into those rooms under the lash of another mind and mood altering substance. However, when they asked me that and told me that I couldn't get in unless I was an alcoholic, my story changed. Yeah, I'm an alcoholic. So they accepted me and let me get in. Now, during this time that I'm in there, I had a couple of spiritual experiences, and I'm trying to speed this up because there's a lot to share in 36 years of recovery. But what I can share with you is that I had a couple of spiritual experiences. We took turns going to the store for one another. And on a particular day that I went to the store to get these guys cookies, chips, candy, and stuff, I walked into this liquor store, which was 2 blocks from that treatment facility. I had to walk past the beer box to the soda box to get their sodas. But the spiritual experience is that I didn't have a desire to buy a 40 ounce of Old English 800. And as I exit out of that store, I was met by my brother, which I had told no one where I was going, but I couldn't understand how he pops up and appears at this particular moment. But he dangled some keys in front of himself and he said, "You see this car sitting right here?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I got that for you." And it blew me away. So I took the keys and I took the car and I went back to the treatment facility, went into the office and asked them if I can keep my vehicle on the property because my brother had just given it to me. And they said, yeah. So I started using my vehicle as a sober-mo vehicle. So I started going to all of these different treatment facilities all out here in Los Angeles, California, Pomona, Riverside, Lancaster, you name it, Long Beach. And so I'm getting a feel of being involved in these meetings and getting familiar with these different groups of people. And I found my niche at 9604. 9604 became my home group. I started attending that meeting on a regular basis. And as I'm attending these meetings, I'm hearing different things that were shared. First of all, they told me as a newcomer, sit down, shut up, and listen. Now, how can you talk to newcomers so rudely, right? And most of the times when a person talks to you in that manner, you want to react like you don't know who I am, respond like that. But they often say, oh, we know who you are if you hear. You just don't know who you are, right? So then they started sharing different things like do 90 meetings in 90 days, find your home group. They also said if you don't pick up a drink, you won't get drunk. They talked about getting a commitment. They talked about finding a sponsor. And so I'm listening to what these people are talking about, and I'm able to relate and identify with some of the stuff that they share. And I remember them saying to find the sponsors, they said, listen to the stories being shared and see if you can relate to that person. And if you believe that they're armed with facts about themselves, because someone in this meeting is going to tell your story. But I'm listening for my story and no one's telling my story. So I'm confused, right? I don't get a sponsor for 4 years. I'm doing a lot of meetings and I got a lot of commitments, but I just don't have a sponsor. I read the big book from time to time in my own free time, but I found out that you can't sponsor yourself. So it came during the time of me experiencing 4 years of sobriety, not sobriety, right? Because I found that I was in an untreated state and condition even at 4 years. Now, what makes my condition untreated is that I lack the aspect of the unity, recovery, and service process in the area of the unity, where I take my mind to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I used to listen to people share in the meetings that they suffer from an allergy of the body coupled with obsession of the mind and a spiritual malady. I couldn't wait to get to the podium and say that because it rolled off their tongue so smoothly that it sounded like they was almost getting ready to start rapping, right? So I get up there. My name is Brother Vernon. I suffer from an allergy of the body coupled with obsession of the mind and the spiritual malady, but I don't even have a clue with what I'm saying. So by the time I got to celebrating that birthday, that anniversary for 4 years of sobriety, there was a speaker at that meeting, and he carried a message, and his message had depth and weight. But his message also gave me insight on what was the void of my recovery that had me in this unstated condition, right? So I asked him, would he be my sponsor? And he accepted. And then he gave me my first instruction. He said, I want you to go get a pen and a piece of paper, and I want you to write down this prayer, and I want you to take this prayer home with you, and I want you to say this prayer 15 times a day or more every day for the next 2 weeks, and then we will sit down and go through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. That prayer was called the set aside prayer. God, please set aside everything I think I know about the big book, the 12 steps, the program, my disease, myself, and especially you, God, for an open mind and a new experience with the big book, the 12 steps, the program, my disease, myself, and especially you, God. Now, my world began to get flipped upside down and inside out as I said this prayer, because he says the reason why we give newcomers or people that's just getting started in this process, this prayer, because you've been around 4 years, so you may be like most of them, they have a case of the I knows. You know you should go to meetings, I know. You know you should get a sponsor, I know. You know you should find a home group, I know. You know you should get a service commitment, I know. Well, since you know so much, why aren't you doing that which you know? I don't know. Then you act like Scooby-Doo, right? Dumb as a bag of hammers, right? So I get involved and I start doing this. And I said that prayer and we finally met up. When we met up, he started opening up the book and he says, you see this first page? He says, what you see on it? And I said, nothing. And he says, that's what you know about recovery. And so I said, okay. So we turned to the next page and they talk about how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. He said that in itself is a promise to you that you could be included in the thousands of men and women that have recovered from this disease. Then we started breaking down the circle and the triangle, its importance. The circle and triangle I found is an ancient symbol that was used in ancient times by ancient people. And this symbol was to ward off evil spirits. Now, these evil spirits that I needed to ward off in taking this symbol into my life is I needed to ward off lying, stealing, manipulating, using, abusing, and whatever else that goes with that list, right? And so he started breaking down the triangle, and he said that the unity part of the circle treats the physical aspect of your disease. So if you come in here filthy, funky, nasty, sneezy, and greasy, and if you are sneaky and you're conniving, and you don't go to the doctor, you don't go to the optometrist, you don't go to these different places where you need medical assistance, where you're not exercising, where you're eating improperly, where your health is bad, then that's an aspect of your disease that needs to be treated. So then he said that we take our mind to the big book in the first 164 pages, along with the doctor's opinion in the prefix, to treat our mind. So he says that we suffer, if you notice that mentally we suffer from the obsession of the mind, the illusions and delusions of the mind, the peculiar mental twisted thinking of the mind, the mental blank spots of the mind, right? And so then he said, well, we go to spirit, to treating the spirit by being of service to others, right? So what I've learned is that I enter into recovery. I enter to learn, but I depart to serve. That's my purpose. I'm given an aim and a purpose in recovery. So as I come in here and learn, I start treating coming into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous as if I am in a library or a classroom. So when you're in the classroom, you learn. You should be learning. And the teacher should be in a position where they know how to reach every student if they can, based on their mastery of their degrees, right? Because you got people that's mastered in psychology, sociology, mathematics, so forth and so on. So they should be able to reach every student in that classroom if they have the proper information and training. And most of them don't, because I noticed that when you go to a classroom and you got almost 50% of the class that's failing the class, then they want to blame the student, but the student shouldn't be to blame. It should be the teacher, because the teacher should be able to reach them so that they can achieve and acquire what they need to. Now, I need to go somewhere else with the message, only solely on the basis of I'm a high school dropout. I dropped out of high school, but since I've been in recovery, I have went back to school. And I didn't go back to get a GED. I went back to get a degree, right? I don't have a high school diploma. I tried to take the GED before, and I didn't pass the test by 1 point. So I carried that resentment for over 20 years. And then I finally go back to school, but I go back and I start off gradually. So I acquired my AA degree in interpersonal communication, and I went on to a university to acquire my BA degree in interpersonal communication. So the skills and the teachings and everything that has been given to me in order to carry a message, God had already instilled that within me before I went to the school to learn other things about communication. But I know how to communicate with people. I know how to communicate with the newcomer, unlike they communicated with me when I got there. What I found is that in step 10, it talked about we need to grow in understanding and effectiveness. So how do you become more effective to the newcomer when they come to the rooms? You extend your hand to them and introduce yourself to that newcomer. That opens up the doorway for the newcomer to introduce themselves back to you. Now you could give that newcomer some directives, like where to place their court card if they have a court card, where you suggest that they sit in the front of the meeting rather in the back of the meeting, so that they can hear the message and not get caught up with the distraction of people walking around in the meetings, right? So this is what I learned, and this is what I practice. You can let them know if we have free coffee, cookies, and chips and donuts and stuff free for the taking. So you're helping the newcomer to become comfortable in the meetings. My thing is that I love Alcoholics Anonymous because I have been given some jewels, some pearls of wisdom. Now, as far as me accepting my condition, the big book tells me I need to concede to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic. The only way that I can concede to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic, I have to study the subject of alcoholism in order to come into agreement with what's been written in the book. Now, the answers to my problem are not in the book. The answers to my problem are within me. So what I found is that what I have ended up doing is taking sentences in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and turning them into questions. And as I ask myself these questions, I can only give that answer to it. That's why it says that to concede means to accept that something is true after rejecting or denying it. So how can I deny the fact that I have this physical allergic reaction to alcohol? I call my allergy the thing. It's like a parasite. And if I have this parasite in me, the only way the parasite can live is by me pouring alcohol into my system so that it can be alive and active. So as it's alive and active, when I'm drinking, what happens is that not only do I break out with this phenomenon of craving for more, but I also start breaking into houses, cars, apartments, women's purses, and whatever else I can break into, right? I break out in rage, I break out in anger, I break out in violence, I break out in arguments. So I'm just not breaking out just with the allergic reaction to drugs and alcohol, because people are mind and mood altering too. I don't know if you ever experienced that. All you can do is say something to somebody and they'll alter their mind, and the next thing you know, they crazy, cussing you out and, raising hell instead of raising heaven. So so what eventually happens is that, so I see that I have this thing in my body because I took a forensic look. I didn't need to go back out and scout out. They told me, look at my past experience. They didn't tell me that I needed to go back out to find out if I had this allergy. But however, the big book does offer you an invitation to go back out. It says, go, if you don't believe that you're an alcoholic, go and try some controlled drinking. See if you can order one drink, take the drink, and leave it alone abruptly. And if you can't, and you find that you cannot, they said, try it again. They want you to get double confirmation to the truth. And then if you do find out and discover that you're an alcoholic, then you're in the right place. But none of us can diagnose another person. So I conceded that I had suffered from these illusions and delusions and peculiar mental twisted thinking and all of this stuff. I believe that my disease started way before I took a drink. I had a sick spirit. It's called the isms. And I often use different things to describe my disease in acronym terms, right? So the acronyms is the abbreviation of other words. So as I looked back at the isms that I had, the ism is the inward spiritual malady of an individual. So as I suffered from this sick spirit, I found alcohol. I tried alcohol. I didn't know that alcohol was distilled spirits, but I found out later on that that's what I was pouring into my system. Other demonic spirits. No alcohol bottle that I have ever drank from or saw ever had any warning signs on it where it may have said, caution, don't drink this. You'll end up in jail. Caution, don't drink this. You'll lose your family. Caution, don't drink this. You'll end up homeless. Caution, don't drink this. You'll end up killing somebody drunk driving. Caution, don't drink this. You'll end up getting a DUI. None of them ever said anything like that. So what I saw in my disease is what I had become. What did I become as an alcoholic? I became what I call is a devil. And devil in acronym terms means destroying everything valuable in life. And that's what I began to do as a direct result of my drinking. I destroyed everything that was valuable in my life, from relationships to family, to friends, to associates, to jobs, to the education system, all of this stuff. So I come in here at zero. Now, who wants to live at zero? Who wants to be described as being nothing, right? So what I did is I aligned my zero self up to the one God that I believe that created us all. Now, this is where they talk about God, God. So my God had to evolve, because based on the God that I was brought up with, or the belief about this God that I was brought up with, I was already condemned to what you call is hell. I had already sinned. I had already went out of line with his laws of his creation. I found out that the first law of God's creation is motion. That is the first thing that he gives all of us: motion, to move. And then once we start moving, the second law shows up. That law is the law of order. So whatever motion that I put out, I have to bring that motion into order. So God takes me from inactivity to activity. So he's given me something to do. He also has done many other things based on his laws, right? Because I found out that the disobedient one is the one that pays the consequences for whatever his motion produces. But the one that accepts God's law of motion and brings that motion into order reap the benefits of what we even have to offer to you here in Alcoholics Anonymous. So you can't receive the blessings just sitting down doing nothing. You can't receive the blessings just sitting here listening to someone day by day. This is a program of motion and activity. We have to get busy around here. I found out that this is a spiritual program, and it didn't say that it's a monetary program. It didn't say that this program is designed to give you the house, the car, the money, the jewelry, the hairdos, and all of this other stuff. This program is designed basically to treat the human soul and the human spirit, as opposed to anything monetary or physical of this world. How did I come into this awareness of my higher power? The first act of my belief in this higher power was God, the gift of desperation. Then I get to the rooms and I'm introduced to a God, a group of drunks. Then I'm given another concept of this God, good orderly directions. As I continue to evolve with these good orderly directions, I find another God, the guidance of development. So I should be growing. My message should not remain the same every time I speak on the platform. There should be some sign of growth and development that I'm uncovering, discovering, and discarding, and finding out new things about Brother Vernon. The hope is around these rooms. Here's how you can acquire hope. Hope means helping other people every day. If you help someone every day, you will have a measure of hope. But if you're sitting in the rooms of recovery and you're restless, irritable, and discontent, as the book describes, then you have a tendency to go nuts. And nuts in acronym terms means not using the steps or not understanding the steps. So why do we have the 12 steps? The 12 steps are designed as, in acronym terms, the solution to every problem sober. So if you hear somebody saying that they slipped up and they got loaded, slip means sobriety lost its purpose. Now, if you have difficulty going on in your life where you indecisive, don't know what to do, they ask me to do what? They say pause. Why do I need to pause? Because pause means to postpone action until serenity enters. So once serenity enters, Now I can start moving again. But however, I found out also from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is that they said that when my expectations of others in people, situations, and things increase, my serenity level decreases. But when my serenity level increases, that means that my expectations have decreased. So I'm finding that the only thing that had me in the condition that I'm in is not the alcohol and it's not those other mind and mood altering substances. What had me in the condition that I am in is self, the bondage of self. So how do I get out the bondage of self? I allow someone to work with me so that I can be able to work with someone else. Because as I am taught, one alcoholic working with another is vital up and down to permanent recovery. So if you hear individuals say, "How you doing, man? What's going on?" "Oh, I'm straight." That means that they flatlining, right? It means that they're dead. And dead doesn't mean the physical absence of the spirit. Dead means that you're insensitive, you stagnant, you motionless, and you have become non-productive. That's a dead state. So God doesn't want us to be in this dead state. He wants us to experience life and be vital. That's my new term for people today. "How you doing today, Brother Vernon?" "Oh, I'm vital." That means that my life is up and down, but I'm still living. I'm just not existing, right? And so I love Alcoholics Anonymous so much so I see that my time is winding down. People, I could give you a host of jewels about recovery from different angles and different perceptions, but I have went through the 12-step process, and I have went through all 12 steps, and I have had a spiritual awakening because I was spiritually asleep. Now I'm no longer asleep. I am conscious and I am aware of what I say, what I put out into the universe. I'm conscious of what I do, how I treat people on a day-to-day basis. And I'm most of all conscious of the presence of God within me. Now, I just want to warn anybody that may have a reservation in recovery. If you are holding on to a reservation in recovery, you may be suffering from what they call is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. That great obsession is called the idea that somehow, someday, I'll be able to control and enjoy my drinking, right? But the thing about having a reservation in recovery as opposed to having a reservation at a restaurant for a dinner with your family or something is two different reservations. The reservation at the restaurant, I know the time, I know the day, and I know the hour when I'm going to fulfill that reservation. But in recovery, if you have a reservation, you do not know the time, nor the day, nor the acquainted time when you are going to act on that thought to drink. So if someone shared with you, put the plug in the jug, don't drink, I suggest to you that you break the jug and don't put a plug in it, because if you put a plug in it, you're setting yourself up for an unseen reservation. When you get discomforted, disturbed, you lose a loved one or somebody, or you fail in some area of your life, you can always go to resort back to that bottle and unplug the jug and start drinking, right? But if you break it, you can't go back to that unless you go back to the liquor store and buy it. So that's my take on that. So everything that you hear, if it don't add up, then it don't make sense, right? In other words, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. So it have to make some sense. And God is not the author of confusion. If you have a problem with your higher power, you're welcome to believe in this minute understanding of a power greater than yourself that brings much simplicity to the listener. If you don't believe in the God concept, then ask yourself this: Go home to your nearest lamp, turn on the light. When the bulb lights up, unscrew it. Lick your finger sticking into the socket. If that's not a power greater than you, then you tell me what is. See, the power works through us. We are like conduits to carry the energy of this higher power. It's amazing how God set up the law of life and death, but yet and still, he's able to escape his own law. And most of us probably never seen it like that. How is God able to escape the law of death? Because he escapes his law by procreating other human beings to transmit his energy through that human being, where they are always constantly being born into life after we lose another loved one, right? And sometimes we can lose another loved one, but we'll find the characteristics of the one that we lost coming up through one of our grandchildren, one of our great-grandchildren, and you can see the behavior in them that used to be in that person that has gone on. I lost my mother 4 years ago. Thank God I was able to make amends to her. Thank God I was able to get free from resentments towards her. Thank God I was able to love my mother until her end, till her transition. And as I used to be the black sheep of the family, I had become the prodigal son that finally came back home to show her the love of God, not the love of me, but the love of God, on how he transforms human beings' life. So look for the transitions in your life where certain things that you used to do, you're no longer doing it. This is about law and order. And I look at it like that because I watch Law and Order all day long. And I find out everybody that break the law, they get a consequences having to be paid for their actions. But if you do the right thing, you think right, you act right, then you're walking in oneness with God on that straight path and in that accordance with his will in his way of life. Thank God we all got the same assignment, so we don't have to be jealous and envious with one another. And that assignment is to help another alcoholic to achieve sobriety, which we all have been charged to do as a duty to our higher power. So with that being said, 57 seconds left. You don't no longer have to live in hell. You don't have to be broke as hell, angry as hell, jealous as hell, envious as hell, negative as hell, sad as hell. Find heaven on earth while you live by rising above that state and condition of your life where you can enjoy heaven right here on earth as God promised to us all. So with that being said, Tamara, thank you once again for your invite. May God bless each and every one of you all that are here on this platform. I don't believe that I said nothing to offend anybody, but if I have, don't charge it to my mind, charge it to my heart. Right? Because I come with the heart of the message, not with the mind of intelligence. So I let God be the director of my mind and my actions and my words. So with that, thank you all so very much for letting me share.